We are recording. Okay, Jane, we're live. We are recording. We have Maya or Mare, or I don't know how it's pronounced, but welcome. It's so great to have you. And hopefully other people will join us. I'll try and keep an eye on people coming in. I thought I set it so that people would just enter, but maybe I didn't.
Yeah, Zoom is doing all sorts of things because it's different. I can't see the waiting room, so yeah.
Maybe I can make you a co-host. Let's just
maybe.
Let me see.
So welcome everyone.
Co-host.
We are very, very excited to be doing this. We sometimes when we do our podcast, we see each other and it's great. So we thought, oh, maybe it will also be great for you to see us. So here we are. Ta-da!
Here we are. And also, not only can you see us, but you can join in. So if at any time you have a question during this podcast, and we're going to be live until approximately 11 a.m., maybe a bit before, but for approximately the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to be live. And if you have any questions for us at all, go ahead and you can either write them in the chat bar on this Zoom call, or there's also an option if you play around with your Zoom menu, because it changes depending on whether you're on a computer or a tablet or a phone, but there's an opportunity to raise your hand. And I've made Jane a co-host. So if either of us notices that you've raised your hand or you've put a question in the chat, we will answer it. And if you're happy to come on and chat to us, that's even more helpful for us, because then we can really understand what's going on for you. And we're really excited about helping you, because this is what Jane and I live for. We live for supporting other parents find their way with compassionate, respectful and kind parenting, and in particular parenting that supports the healing of trauma that our children may have experienced and prevents future trauma from taking place. We're not looking for perfection though, are we, Jane?
We are definitely not. And those of you who have joined us before will know, and those of you who are joining us for the first time this season will discover that Bea and I are very, very open about the stuff ups that we have done and created as parents, because, you know, how have we got to where we are now? Well, because we were keen to learn, and because our children kept showing us, we don't like this, we're not comfortable with how you're doing this with us, and sometimes because of your own trauma and anxiety, you don't see the messages they're giving you. So we're very much a learn the hard way people, and that's what we bring to you in bucket loads.
Well, and sometimes, as I did yesterday, you do see the message your child is giving you, but because you're feeling so triggered in the moment, you still choose to speak to them in a way that's not great. So my 14-year-old, we had this well, it was a family barbecue, but it was a neighbour's barbecue. So 4 sets of neighbours all had a barbecue in their garden. So we all did our own barbecues, but we all timed it. It was all at the same time. And my teenage boys, so my youngest is 14 and my eldest is coming up to 16. And they both came down. It was really, really wonderful. But my youngest son at the moment, firstly, he's in a nocturnal phase. So he's not sticking to the same hours as the rest of us. Secondly, he's just definitely in a hormonal stage where I can just tell that nothing really feels particularly great in his world a lot of the time. And so that comes about as just being a bit off, a little bit like moody, I suppose. And sometimes the way he speaks to me, it's actually not that he's even being rude. He's just speaking in the way that I would probably speak if I was having a crappy day. But I'd been working so hard to manage the barbecue, to sort the food. I'd been and done the shopping. I was preparing, I was basically doing a million things at once and trying to coordinate with my neighbors. And my boys are really tall as well, so like they're very in my, you know, where they used to be under my feet, now they're just physically in my space. Come on then, this is Coco, everybody. Coco likes to join in.
She does. She's one of our co-hosts. Coco's a co-host.
so I was aware that I had this slight kind of anxiety around the pressures of the time and the preparation and bringing it all together. And I think that actually he had some anxiety about what was happening, you know, and with hindsight, and actually almost immediately afterwards, I realized that was what was going on. But what I received in the moment was just a 14-year-old boy speaking to me in what sounded really lacking appreciation and gratitude. Not, you know, he was appearing not to be helpful and all. I can't even remember what he said, but I just turned around to him and I said, would you please stop being rude to me? Just talk to me in a nice way. And as soon as I said it, I knew that, well, A, he wasn't actually really being rude. He was just being a bit off. But I knew that it was coming from this place of anxiety and just not feeling great in himself. So, you know, I am very aware that although the majority of the time I really am finding a yes to joy, peace and connection with my kids, with myself, you know, for the majority of the time I do find a yes to a respectful, compassionate and kind way with my kids. I don't always. So, you know, I'm still, although I'm not parenting little ones, I'm still very much in that parenting space where I still have those children in my home with me, you know, triggering those things in me that still want to be, you know, resolved and healed. And Jane's different. Jane's son is now in his late 20s, but Jane has fostered many children. With her own son, Jane has shared often in series 1, if you listen to that or have listened to it, Jane has shared a lot about the tremendous and very scary at times health challenges and the journey that she went on with her son. At times not even sure if he was going to survive. Is that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he's a big 29-year-old man now, married with a woman I adore. So I have two giant babies now. But yeah, no, there was a time when I was told that he would be dead by now. There was another time when he nearly died in front of my eyes, which doesn't then make you still be the perfect parent later on, you know, because as Bea says, we're all human. And this is maybe a really, although we didn't plan it like this is such a good thing to be thinking about today, is the lack of perfection to be acceptable, and to know that in this time that we're in now, so we're recording this during the coronavirus, anxiety levels are much higher for many parents and many children. So that beautiful example that Bea just shared of knowing one thing, but in the pressure and in the moment of whatever, everyone's anxiety coming together and there being this disconnection, which of course afterwards you're like, oh, you know, is to be expected right now, particularly because these are such weird times, very weird times. And, you know, for some people, I mean, Bea and I have been having lots of chats prior to coming on today about, you know, how there has never been a time like this to be parenting. This is unusual. You're not imagining it. You know, when you look at all the perfect photographs on Facebook and other places, it can easily make you feel like, oh my goodness, they're doing that. I haven't done, you know, I saw actually a client of mine yesterday post some unbelievable pictures on Facebook of things that she's doing with her little, she's got 3 little boys. And I was thinking, how did she even manage to take the photos? Never mind set these activities up like this. But I cannot believe, you know, that it's not something to aspire to right now, is my point.
Well, what I was going to add to that, my sister is parenting a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I mean, it's extraordinary what she's doing with them. But I also know, being her sister, that, you know, what she shares, you know, they're the great moments. You know, what I also know is all the time she's spending during the day, you know, separating them, helping them work through the conflicts they're having, stopping them from fighting, cleaning up messes. You know, she's there wishing she could just get out of the house, you know, and have some time off. So, you know, and it wouldn't be appropriate for us to be taking photos or videos of our children when they're having a tantrum or when they're fighting each other. You know, the really tough times in our day, or the boredom, like who's going to take a photo of the boredom? Like, so we see all this like shiny parenting, but I think what it really comes from is the fact that it's not appropriate or interesting to share some of the other stuff, but also I think it's a great thing for us to focus on what's good, you know, to be in that place of gratitude and celebration, but to remember when we're looking at other people's presenting that we're not comparing ourselves to them. Like, we're aware that they're saying these were the great things that happened today, you know, these are snapshots. And you know, that if we chatted to that person, we would also hear about the fact that, I don't know, maybe they yelled at their kids because the kids asked for porridge and they made the porridge and then the kids refused to eat it. And the fact that they told the children that the water needed to stay in the bath, but the children, when their back was turned, tipped it all over the bathroom floor. And, you know, all of these things that will be happening alongside. And especially for families who live without gardens, or have limited outdoor space, or kind of live in urban environments where it's quite difficult to get out to the park or the playground. One of my friends, she has two little ones. She has a grown-up, well, a 15-year-old son, but she also has two adopted little ones. And unless she has her partner with her, she cannot physically leave the house with them because they just go in different directions. Mm-hmm. So if you're her husband is a nurse, so she actually is on her own, you know, for a lot of time with them. So she's stuck in the house, and it's really difficult. Now, if you're a single parent, or, you know, for whatever reason, you're trying to manage essentially a pressure cooker of potential stressful situations that can be coming up for you, whether you've got a newborn stroke baby, you've got toddlers, you've got that kind of in between age of, like, you know, the kind of preschool, early school, or kind of up until they're like 11, 12, that when, you know, like my boys tend to just be up in their bedroom most of the time. But there are so many factors right now because of the conditions that we're living in with the coronavirus that are heaping up the pressure onto not only you as the parent, but also onto your children. You know, that our child might say, can we go to the park? Or can we go and see grandma and grandpa? Or can we go to the shops? Can we go and see our friends? And we have to say, no, no, we can't do that. And putting those limits on our children is something that in normal times, you know, Jane and I would certainly be trying to support our clients and the families who follow us on social media and things, to find ways to kind of be able to have that expansive experience of life. And right now, that's not something that, you know, any of us can do. So whatever challenges you're facing right now, the most important thing, I think, is that you respond to yourself with incredible kindness and compassion. That, you know, you just acknowledge that, flipping heck, if today, you know, we only stay in our pajamas, we manage to, I don't know, do some, you know, Play-Doh, and then we watch Disney all afternoon. You know, if that means you get through the day with relative kind of peace and calm with your kids, let those days happen. There's going to be so many days in the future where you can get out and about and do all the other stuff. I just think this is, although right now it feels like a long period of time, it's a blip in the grand scheme of your parenting journey and the grand scheme of your child's childhood. This is actually a tiny blip. And I personally think, go for ease. Go for what makes it possible to reduce the pressure for you and your children. What do you think about that, Jane?
Yeah, I think it is so much. It was funny when you were talking, and I was thinking, you know, my son, pretty much, he lost a year and a half of his education in senior school through his illness. So he was physically out of school for a whole academic year. And then in addition to that, with all the hospital stays he had and the appointments we had and all the rest of it, he lost at least another 6 months in his senior school of his education. So he would have been around 13, 14 then, pretty crucial bit. And of course, you know, no one would want that for their child. But you know what? That boy, he eventually went back to school. He didn't really have and he's, you know, I mean, he's pretty damn bright, but he was not academic at that point. But somehow he picked it all up. He somehow decided to take himself to college at the end of it. He somehow managed to get into university and do a degree. So it's really important to just focus, as Bea says, on you and your children. I have been inviting people to, and in no way do this rigidly, really, really not, and in no way be marking yourself out of 10 for it, but to have a gentle structure to your day, because certainly younger children, they like a kind of flow, and some of them are still coming out of the absolute shock. You know, many adults are struggling, but the children are still struggling with, this was my life, it all went like this, and boom, it went in a heartbeat. And okay, people can say, oh well, it's because of blah blah blah, but their systems are still reeling from what happened. So for them to have a gentle structure, you know, at this time we follow whoever online. Some people are doing the jumping around man. Other people are doing yoga. Yeah. You know, but to have that in, but if it takes 3 hours or it lasts 2 minutes, it doesn't matter. But some children's systems and ours like that, okay, and then there will be a something after, and you know, but not in with any rigidity, but just because some children that feels a bit safer.
Yeah, just to share my perspective, I would never have been able to do that. I as a person, I have tried so hard to find different routines and structures, and they just don't work for me. What works for me is rhythm and ritual. So I will always make myself a proper cup of tea with tea leaves. I never have it before 9 a.m. But for me, that cup of tea, whether I have it at 9 a.m. or whether I don't have it until 10 a.m. or whatever, that's like a thing that I have every day. And interestingly, with my boys have always really pushed back against any kind of structures that I've, even gentle, loose ones, tried to put in place. But what I discovered for the three of us is that when they were part of creating that structure, so I'm thinking probably from about the age of 4 onwards, maybe, once they were able to contribute and share with me that, then I adapted that kind of the rhythm of our family accordingly. But for us as a family, the way that we have thrived is to be constantly kind of changing, a bit like, you know, the ocean. It's the same body of water. It has the same level of salinity for the most part, but the waves come and go in a very different way well, not just every single day, sometimes like minute by minute it changes. And that my family has and continues to be very, very like that. So I think that I suppose it's about really giving yourself permission to work out what's right for your family. So for a lot of families, having that gentle structure, which is how my sister is operating, is really working. And my next door neighbor has little ones as well, and they've got quite a clear, but again, it's a relatively loose structure, but it's a clear structure. And so some families really thrive with that. But I know for a fact that my family never, ever, you know, that just would have created instant stress for me. So I want to share that perspective, because I don't want anybody to ever listen to Jane and I and to think just because, you know, we are parenting experts in the British media, on radio, TV, just because we have this platform, when we say something, therefore that must be right for you, because it isn't necessarily going to be right for you. It will always be right for you if it is kind and compassionate and respectful. So that's one thing across the board. Like Jane and I would never advocate any of the parenting approaches that are controlling or rooted in kind of fear and manipulation. we would never advocate any approaches that, you know, require us trying to use our power over our children. But sorry, my dog's distracting me. But if you find that something works for you and you're able to pursue that in a way that is kind and compassionate and respectful to yourself and to your children, then it doesn't matter if it doesn't work for anyone else. If it works for you guys, then that's for me, I think that's the most important thing, to know what's right for your family, and then to receive what Jane and I share as a kind of a guidance, to kind of say, look, you know, here's the path, but look, there's those interesting flowers off to the side there, and just up there are that's a interesting little bit of land formation, and here you can go under the path if you want to, and join us on the other side. It's like, this is the way, but you can explore what works for you in and around that path. Because if you get stuck trying to go, oh, well, Jane said this or B said this, but this is really stressful for me, then that stress is going to have a negative impact on your own well-being, and then on your relationship with your kids. Jane, I've just seen that you've shared something exciting in the chat bar. Go ahead and talk all about it.
Oh, I just thought that it might be handy for people to know all the different ways that you can find. In fact, it's not all of them, because there are many, but there are some of the ways that you can find out. Bea has an amazing online program, which she maybe will say a little bit about at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one that's running, starts today actually, and then there's all the different ways you can interact with us, that you can just come say hi, and you know, share things with us. As Bea says, we want to just be a sounding board for you, and a place to hold you and share what we have learned from the work that we do with parents, from all the studying we've done, and from everything our children have taught us. And I mean, certainly I was just listening, and hopefully I said that as I was talking, that, you know, this is what I have found, that structure, again, in no way rigid. You know, if everybody said, no, I absolutely don't want to go to the park, then that's fine. I know I used to be a childminder, and in the summer holidays, sometimes I would have 8 children in my house, which was a joyful thing. But yeah, it was, and very different age ranges. So we definitely had a level of fluidity, but they seemed to like to know, you know, we have snack time around then, and, you know, after lunch we go to the park, and you know, for those children having a routine, maybe because they weren't with their family, but there was never any rigidity. I mean, the whole point of what Bea and I do is that we are with the children where they are, and, you know, even if you have to manage 8 different needs, then somehow, and that is, you know, pretty big, somehow you just slow down, and generally what you find is there's a majority, and, you know, sometimes we just have to sit in the space with the child who really didn't want to go to the park, and hold their feelings, and, you know, we move forward from there, because it is really complicated. You know, I raised one child, but I often cared for multiple children, and so nothing is set in stone. I think I've just seen a lot of the parents I work with panicking about not knowing how to manage all the time and space they have with their children, and finding it overwhelming themselves. But then the opposite they were looking at was all the stuff on Facebook. Oh, people have this very, very really rigid, you know, 10 to 11 is maths and blah blah blah. And so I was trying to give people balance and say, just have a flow. And if for whatever reason they become particularly fascinated with why dogs lick their bottoms, this is fine. We will spend a long time researching that. You know, it doesn't matter. But yeah, just for some children, having a flow feels good. And then, you know, but if it's a day when everybody wants a pajama day, fabulous, have a pajama day. It's you know, it's holding yourself so that you can hold whatever comes up. And feel comfortable with it. If you feel comfortable, then the children will feel comfortable.
Yes, I was laughing when you talked about if if what comes up is why dogs lick their bottoms, because, and then you said, you can spend hours researching that, because there would have been no researching in my house. There simply would have been two boys on the floor trying to lick their own bottoms.
Yeah, well, that's research.
Oh, it is, it's true.
Yeah.
There were two things that you said that I think would be really valuable for us to talk about. But before we talk, and I'm going to say what they are now, because if I say them, then hopefully one of us will remember. One is this idea of holding the space. You talked about holding space for our children's emotions. So that was one of them. And the second one's gone. Right, so let's talk about holding space. But before we do, one of the things that we decided coming into season 2 of our podcast is we really want to make sure that you know how you can access support from us outside of these podcasts, because it's really great that you get to hear all of this, and with season 2 you get to be part of it, and ask questions if you want to interact with us, but sometimes you might think, God, I really need more support with that, or I had no idea that Jane was doing this mini coaching program. I had no idea that Bea had the Yes Parenting Digital Pack. So we want to make sure that every episode we share with you the different ways that you can work with us if that's going to support you as you parent and on this journey with us. So we're going to take a moment now to each just share with you some of those things, and we're going to make sure that all of this information is in the description setting on YouTube. By the way, if you're watching this on a replay on YouTube, it's all below on our YouTube channel with links to everything we're talking about. So Jane, do you want to share one or two of the ways that people can work with you and why they might want to choose those options?
Yeah, the two main ways are, I've got my Crisis to Calm Parents coaching program, which is starts tonight, 5 evenings in a row, and it's, there will be some insight, some understanding, particularly around anxiety and stress, yours and the children, and how to weave your way through that at the moment with, tools and resources, definitely. And then there's an opportunity at the end of every session to all come together and just for people to say, okay, but today I've struggled with this. So, and we look at it together and you get a solution on the spot. And then the other way is I coach parents. So I get the opportunity to work one-to-one with people. I use a specific technique. So it's a bit like you get an upgrade to your beliefs and your habits so that they don't keep showing up in your parenting, because otherwise they will. They will. And that's the thing that, and Bea and I are both of us very familiar with this. You can read every book in the land and you can go on all sorts of things, but it's the old beliefs and the old habits from our childhood that then mean that we can't always deliver on it, and then sometimes that makes us feel worse. So those are the two main ways that you can
And if somebody does want to join in with the Crisis to Calm mini program that starts this evening, how have you put that link in the chat bar?
Yeah, I put the link in the chat box here, and that will be ongoing in some way, shape or form until people say, I am completely calm and there is no need of this, Jane Evans. On your way.
Brilliant. Okay, I just want to welcome 1+7. It is lovely to have you here. We're just having a wonderful conversation. We've just paused to talk about the ways that those listening can work directly with us if anything's coming up that they want to explore more. And then we're going to continue our conversation, specifically talking about holding space for our children's emotions. But as is the way with Jane and I, it could meander and go off in a completely different direction. But anyway, so there are two primary ways that it's really easy for you to work with me or access my support. So one of those is the Yes Parenting Digital Pack, which is an online, it's like a course or a program, but you can work through it in series, or you can just dip in and out any way you want. And it's a lot of bite-sized videos that talk you through the fullness of Yes Parenting. Welcome, Jessica. It's lovely to have you here. And once you buy it, you have lifetime access to it. And every 3 months, we do a live Q&A. So if things are coming up for you and you want to be able to ask me about them, so it's like, oh, B, I was listening to that video about boundaries, and it's so different to how I thought about boundaries. I don't get it. You know, you've got an opportunity to ask me. So that's currently, because of the coronavirus crisis, I have more than... Hello. Just popping in here on my own without Jane. Further along in the day, when I'm getting around to edit the video, we had some very disturbing content suddenly pop up and was shared. So I've cut it out. What it means is it was a really sudden, abrupt stop to me having the opportunity to share about how you can work with me. And then where the video is going to pick up again is kind of us trying to reset things. So if you do want to find out more about how you can work with me and recap on how you can work with Jane, just have a look below this video in the description area and it will tell you all about it. It's on the replay while I am just tapping because I've had this sudden surge of like anxiety response. We had somebody join the call and started sharing their screen and sharing completely inappropriate and quite upsetting content. So this tapping that I'm doing is actually how I work with people, but it might be a bit confusing because I've edited out the inappropriate stuff before uploading it to YouTube. So
deeply disturbing.
Yeah, it was.
This is the only thing, and I discovered it. I was actually in a women's, it was for professionals who work in domestic violence, because I worked for many years in domestic violence. So I was invited in to do a little presentation, particularly around for parents and children. And of course, the link was on social media, as we've been putting our link everywhere. And likewise, we got some people joining in with very inappropriate. So it's kind of sad that we want to offer this out, and then in reality, we're going to have to really up our game in terms of security now. Lesson learned. So
I think that there is a way, if we can get our head around the settings, that we can prevent anybody else from sharing their screen. So we can lock the room, which we have now done. But of course, that's not very flexible.
No, we'll discuss this maybe another time.
Yeah.
So just to go into holding space.
Go on. Let's talk about holding space.
People are going to want that. So holding space for our children, it's so the idea behind this is that we all, as we've just seen now, move in and out of physical and emotional states all the time. Nobody is static. You know, we often will say, I am angry or I am this. And in that moment, of course, and it's really good to acknowledge to ourselves, even if we, don't share it. But we don't stay in an emotional state. So likewise, children, they are in and out of emotions even more so than adults. And they find this deeply overwhelming a lot of the time because they haven't developed the brain capacity and the body systems to, okay, I have this feeling, I can recognize this feeling, I can be with this feeling, and I can allow it and let it go on its way if it's one that's uncomfortable. So ta-da, this is where we come in, that's our role, for want of a better word, is that we are there. And this is so not easy. I'm saying it like it's easy, and we're there to hold a space. It's really not. But that's why B and I do the work that we do, is that to hold a space means that we have to get to know ourselves really well and learn oh, when my child makes that face or that sound, or their frustration really hits me, and then for me to, so it's a bit like treading water in a way, holding space, but rather than disappearing, it's trying to, and this is again, this is, none of this is easy, be with the child and the feelings that they have at that time, so that they feel like they, yeah, it's like a container. I am containing your feelings. I'm not judging them or trying to get rid of them. I'm just here. It's okay, we will be okay, or just I'm here. And that can be any age of child. But you know, it means us beginning to know, how do I keep myself steady during this? And it can be things like learning, actually, if I sit on the floor, I can do this. You know, it's not so much the words that come out of your mouth, it's the state that you manage to keep yourself in, and you know, will make the difference. It isn't about perfection. It's not about saying the right perfect phrase. There isn't one at a time like that. But it is about, okay, I can just be with this. It's hard, but I can be with it, and then allowing them to come through it.
Yes, I have a whole section actually in the Yes Parenting Digital Pack all about this process of holding space. And I talk about there being a physical, mental, emotional, and energetic aspect to holding space. So the physical aspect of holding space, especially if your child, you know, your child is, you know, presenting, you know, like a tantrum type behavior, the physical holding space is to physically make sure the space is safe. Safe for our child, safe for us. And ideally, we don't really want to have to move the child away. We want the child, because they've gone into, you know, quite an intense space themselves, because they're dealing with a difficult emotion, or set of emotions. So ideally, we want to make the space that they are in safe if we can. Emotionally holding space is, and mentally, is what Jane has just described. So it's knowing that although we may well have an emotional response or a mental response in terms of our thoughts, like I never would have got away with that, or you know, my child is being so unreasonable, you know, those kind of thoughts that rush forwards, or the strong emotions that come up in us, emotionally and mentally holding space is not saying that those things don't matter, but it's actually recognizing that in this moment, my role as the parent, my role as the grown-up, is to be able to create this container, as Jane described, in which I am letting my child know that their feelings and their thoughts are welcome and accepted, and knowing that later on we can go and get whatever support we need for the emotional and mental response that we had. But in that moment, it's essentially a space that on an emotional and a mental level says, I hear you, I love you, and you're okay. And then the energetic space is something that's very hard to describe. And some people actually create like a visual sense of the energy of the situation. So some people, I don't do this because I never remember to do it, but I know some parents who visualize like a white bubble around them and their child. So like there's this kind of this energetic force field within which the parent and the child are just together. And I really encourage parents to stay as silent as possible, because what we often have a habit of doing is rushing in with trying to fix it or correct, or, you know, like your child might say, I hate my brother and I wish they'd never been born. And a lot of parents will say, you know, you don't really mean that. You don't really hate your brother. You know, 5 minutes ago you were getting on fine. But actually, in that moment, the child, that's not helpful to the child. They don't really mean that they hate their brother and they wish they'd never been born. What they're doing is they're simply expressing this huge emotional experience going on inside. So if we can really step into, first and foremost, being someone who is listening and hearing the fullness of what our child is needing to express, And then as we do start to speak, I encourage parents to, because they're really listening to their child, to almost repeat back, to validate what our child is saying. So it's saying, I know, I hear how much you hate your brother right now. Or, you know, yes, you're so disappointed because your ice cream fell on the floor. Or, I know you're scared of butterflies. Or, you know, whatever it is, just to repeat back to our child what our child is saying, because it really lets them know that that container that we've created is a safe place for them. And what our child does, and this is, I mean, all humans do this, it's just many of us have been raised in a way that we haven't been supported to do this. But what happens in the human brain is, as it goes through this process of kind of all of this stuff coming out of us, the child's brain, or the human brain, because adults can do this too, is actually resetting itself. And if you're able, and it is really difficult if you've got lots of other kids around, or even just one other kid around, but if you're able to stay present with your child in that container, in that held space, and hold that space for them, they'll get to a point where it's almost like they just take a deep breath, and then they'll just say something like, oh, what's for tea, mummy? Or can we go play Lego now? Or something. And you might be reeling, thinking, what? Like, you've just had this huge emotional response and now you're fine. But the reason they're fine is because you've held that space for them. And then you then obviously have your own emotions, your own thoughts that you then need to process and manage in a way and at a time that is good for you. I have what's called a listening partner. So as well as my own tools, using flower essences, using tapping, which was the thing I did earlier on when I had that sudden response to the interruption. I also have a listening partner, and that is someone who I know that I can contact. We do it via WhatsApp messaging, and I can just splurge whatever needs to come out of me, and she will listen to it. She doesn't try and fix it, offer solutions or anything. She listens to it and she says, I hear you, Bea. I hear how overwhelming that situation was. I hear how angry you felt with your son. And, you know, she just literally tells me what she heard. So she's then my container. And then that, once I've had that outpouring, then I'm back in a centered place too. But this is, like Jane says, this is not easy, because when our child is having that big emotional outpouring, any time when we were a child and we were told to, you know, just be quiet, or go to your room, or for goodness sake, you're crying over nothing, or whatever it was, all of those times, unless we have healed them, they are all being triggered. So all these parts of us from when we were little are basically saying, I want to speak, I want to say something. It's not fair that this child gets to be heard. I was never heard. So all of that's coming up in us. That's why we have these really strong reactions. And when we heal those parts of ourselves, which is the work that Jane does with her special coaching technique, it's the work that I do with my clients through my EFT sessions. The way that Jane and I both work, we clear the energetic imprint of those traumatic experiences that's left over in our body, so that then you come back into situations like that with your child and you no longer are triggered in that same way. Suddenly you're able to just be with the distressed child in front of you. Suddenly holding space becomes easier. But until you've done that work, holding space is a really, really challenging thing to do. But it's essential. It's so important to do it to the best of your ability. And it's not always going to be easy, especially if you've got other kids saying, Mom, 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 you know, or Dad, 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 or, you know, whatever. But the more you can try to do it, the better it's going to be for you and your kids.
Perfect. That sounds like a wonderful note to end on.
I think so too. Are we going to give some top tips though? Because we do like to give practical takeaway tips.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, let's.
Well, my top two tips, I mean, really just, thinking about what we've spoken about today. One would be, right now, really look at your self-care. Not like long candlelit baths or anything like that, but what are the small things that you can do for yourself throughout the day that are going to keep your resources topped up? So I mean, it will vary from person to person, but sometimes for me, just if the sun is shining and I can just stand with the sun on my face for 1 minute and take a moment to connect with my breath, that is the most beautiful act of self-care. Or but it might be having a cup of your favorite cup of tea. It might be, I don't know, I'm trying to think, and I can't think of examples of self-care, but small acts of self-care peppered throughout your day will really support you to kind of just stay present and to respond to what's coming up for you at this time. So that would be my first one. My second one would be to move your body. Get your kids involved if they want to move too. So movement could be anything from doing rough and tumble with your kids to putting on a yoga video or doing the Joe Wicks PE at 9 o'clock in the morning, or it might just be putting your favorite song on and dancing. But getting your body moving will change your physical energy, and changing your physical energy will begin to change your emotional and mental energy. So pepper your day with small acts of self-care and make time to move your body in a way that feels good for you. Those are my two tips. Jane.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll do mine. I'll do mine. Why would I not? There's no one else. There's just us two. So one I already mentioned is explore getting on the ground. So when a child is struggling, it often understandably makes us struggle, and contact with the ground is very powerful. So it might be that your child feels safer, and again, get curious about this. It's something that's brilliant to learn. One child might prefer you to stand up to say, are you okay? Because they like that kind of bigger energy. Another child might feel safer if you sit on the ground. And the great thing about either is you can use it as an opportunity to help your whole body system feel a bit calmer and safer. I was doing it then when the weird things appeared on our screen that were not invited. I was just pushing some weight down into my feet to just bring myself back into the moment. Again, if you sit on the ground or lie on the ground, all those things will work really well. And it's just exploring it, just rocking on backwards and forwards on your feet. It connects you back into your body, which then gives the signal to your brain of, oh, we're okay. Oh, actually, we're okay. Whereas when a child has a big emotion, it pulls you straight out of your body into boom. And then we don't have the resources. And the second one has gone completely out of my head. Completely. Oh, I know what it was.
Cake.
It's a cake. Oh God, I don't have any cake. Don't mention cake. I have no cake, and I'm not a baker, and I guess anyway. So I've got one hot cross bun left, FYI. The second one was to be curious. So a lot of my clients at the moment, they've been messaging me and saying, oh, although not enjoying being, necessarily trapped inside, because some of them live in apartments and they don't have any real outside area. But what I am noticing is it's really shown me that this is the thing. I can cope with a lot of stuff, but when, Emily does this, it really sends me over the edge. And then when Jake does this, that's the thing in him that sends me over the edge. So they're kind of using this as a way to explore, because when life is so hectic and you're running and it's like, oh, I've got to get to school and all the rest of it, you don't have time to take stock. So not in a way where, this is a test for you, but just to start to be curious. Maybe just one day think, you know what, I'm just going to zoom in a bit on Emily and what are is there one specific thing? I can do all the rest, but then when she does that one thing, so you start to build up an understanding yourself of, oh, okay, so that's a time when I extra need to be pushing down in my feet. The rest of it, not really, but that, you know, the whining sound or the no from one child will be more triggering than another, because it's a great, you know, it is an opportunity to start learning yourself at that level.
Wonderful. I love, you know, I love being reminded about curiosity. I just, you know, not just in parenting, curiosity about ourselves, curiosity about all sorts. You know, children are naturally curious.
Oh, they are.
It's an amazing thing to just observe children. They will slow down and be curious about all sorts. And when you slow down to their speed, it's amazing what you discover. And somehow, I think in the growing pace of life and the expectations and responsibilities and stuff as we get old, you know, we grow up through adolescence into adulthood, we forget about being curious. And so being curious about our kids, as well as just in general, just being curious, is a really valuable thing. Wonderful. Okay, so just a reminder, Jane has got her Crisis to Calm is it a mini coaching series? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a mini coaching program. It's online for the next 5 evenings, and then it will start again next week. And then I may pull another rabbit out of my hat after that. We don't know.
Wonderful. My Yes Parenting digital pack is currently available at yesparenting.co.uk. And once you own that, you have lifetime access. And also both of us are available for one-to-one sessions. We are going to put all of those details in the description underneath the YouTube video, so you can find us there. We don't yet have any subscribers to our YouTube channel. So please, 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 would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? Then you will know, like, when new videos come up and things like that. We will be live again next Monday at 10 o'clock British Summer Time. That's GMT +1. So look for the link on our Instagram profile. We're going to try and work out the settings so that we don't have the unfortunate interruption we had today. And, oh, look, hi, Susanto. It's lovely to see you. We're really glad you're here. Contact Zoom, guys.
Yes, we will figure this out in terms of, as I say, I know I had a similar thing on another Zoom call, sadly, and we hadn't anticipated it, had we been. We just thought we'd be here with some amazing
lovely parents.
But then sadly there are people who just, I don't know, pretty
I know, and they came on with such a friendly looking profile picture, didn't they? So it was,
you live and learn, don't you?
You do live and learn. And
it will be edited out so no one will have a clue what we're talking about, but there you go.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, do join us next Monday live. Find us on YouTube. We will, once I've edited this video, uploaded it, I'll be putting it on our Instagram, and we'll be putting it on our Facebook. So we'll be able to tell you how to find us. Okay, thank you. Mwah. Bye.
Bye.